So this webinar is organized by Doctor of Business Administration of Kelaniya University as a knowledge sharing session. This is the fifth session that we conduct, and today topic is selecting software tools in research. There are plenty of softwares used in the analysis of research. This is one of the main issue in research. We find today that to select and how to select is the important as per the today's context. The gap in this can bridge using the question why, what, and how. These are the three main questions used in qualitative research. So we'll try to bridge the gap of quantitative research through qualitative approach. Our key resource person today is Dr. Engineer Priyantha Morapitiya. First, I welcome you, Doctor, for the session. Dr. Morapitiya is an engineer graduated from University of Moratuwa and obtained his master's from Yokohama University and Masters of Business Administration from University of Kelaniya. Further, he obtained Doctor of Business Administration from the Kelaniya University. Dr. Morapitiya is the course coordinator of Premier EduCare Institute. He has vast experience in research as a researcher and mentor. Dr. Morapitiya is very special to us. Why he used two softwares in his research to triangulate the findings, and he is one of the member of Doctor of Business Administration of Kelaniya University. Further, I would like to request you can drop your questions at the chat box, and later we will take those for the discussion at the end of the Q&A session. So I would like to hand over the sessions to Dr. Priyantha Morapitiya. Doctor, you can continue.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sanath Divakara. First of all, I must thank to the University of Kelaniya, who brings the first DBA program in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, as you know, there are so many state universities, but Kelaniya is the first university to bring the DBA program in Sri Lanka. So my first thanks goes to the University of Kelaniya. Then Dibaku Kelaniya. Dibaku Kelaniya, thank you very much for bringing this kind of sessions from time to time. Thank you very much, Dibaku Kelaniya. And finally, my very, very special thanks goes to the Vice President of the Dibaku, Dr. Sanath Divakara, the qualitative expert, who invites me for this important session. Okay, so without taking much time, I would like to go straight away for the slides and the presentation, because we have almost 40 slides to complete within 2 hours time. Okay. So there are seven objectives to be completed in this very special session, right? So whatever the things that you can't understand, you can ask straight away from me or straight away from Dr. Sanath Divakara. So whether your research is quantitative based or qualitative based, that is the question, right? So please note that whether it is quantitative or qualitative, that has to be decided based on your research question. I will repeat it. So whether your research is quantitative or qualitative is decided based on your research topic. Okay. So depending on your research topic, you have to select whether it is a quantitative or whether it's qualitative. In very simple, in the layman's language, I will tell you quantitative means clearly with the facts and figures. Qualitative means no figures, barely facts. So please understand the difference between the key difference between these two. And there are some other things. For example, if you want to go for the quantitative, you should have some statistical knowledge. But don't worry about that. I know that all of you have the Excel knowledge, Excel worksheet knowledge. So that is more than enough, right? So please understand, don't worry about, even if you don't know the SPS techniques, don't worry about that, you can learn it. And the next is the type of data, because when you are working on towards your research, you should be able to get the primary data as well as the secondary data, and you should get the quantitative data as well as the qualitative data. So if you want to do a quantitative research, you must be able to get the quantitative data. Okay, so that's all about the slide number 3. So I will repeat it. So whether you are supposed to do the quantitative or the qualitative research, that is decided based on your research question. Okay, thank you very much. So there are 6 one head-to-head comparison I have given here, so you can check it later, right? And only one thing I will be explaining here. So if you want to do a national research, or if you want to do some generalized research, then definitely you have to go for the quantitative. Okay, so that is what the main difference between the qualitative and the quantitative. Okay, so please note that if you are into a national research or whatever, then you have to go for the quantitative type research. Okay, right. So this is the research onion. Research onion means how you are going to do a quantitative research. So this blue color, you can see very clearly, everything is given the blue color. That is the research onion originally developed by the Saunders et al. In 2017. In addition to the blue area, you can see there are some red marked areas that was developed by me, just modified, right? So please check this this research onion. This is there in the Google. So you can straight away insert this research union into your final thesis or the research proposal. This is you can check it from the Google, right? But this red areas that has been modified by me, you can check it, right? I'm not going to detail. So please remember that here you can see the arrows are coming from here, right? From here and goes like this. This is the path that you have to go if you are into a quantitative research. So please remember that and please note that part. Okay, right. And this is a very, very important chart. This is called 6-step model of the SEM, structural equation modeling. Actually, in frank speaking, when I was writing my report or when I was doing my research, I didn't know about this chart. But I included this chart in my report irrationally, without any knowledge. But now I know it, so therefore I want to share my knowledge with you. But as I told you very clearly, when I was doing my research, even though I included this very important chart, I never knew about the facts. Okay, so now you have the chance to learn it by yourself. Okay, so this is called 6-step, whether you are doing masters or whether you are doing PhD or whether you are doing undergraduate, no issue, you can include this chart, this 6-step model, if you are doing the quantitative type research. So please remember about that. Now, what is the stage number 1? I'm sure that all of you know the stage number 1, but you don't know that this is stage 1. But you are doing this operation, right? What is that? Defining the individual constructs. That means you will have to identify your variables. I will tell you very clearly how you have to identify your variables very clearly, right? That is under the stage number 1. Define your individual construct. That means you have to identify your variables. You have to identify your key variables, dependent variables, mediator, moderator, and independent variables, right? That is stage number 1. So what is the stage number 2? Defining and specify the measurement model, right? That means you will have to develop your conceptual framework and you will have to develop your scales to measure the variables you have already identified. I will repeat it again, right? That means, so you are identifying some variables through the critical literature review. So please remember that when you identify your independent variables or the mediating variables or the moderating variables, you must be able to find the related scales, indicators, or items to measure that particular item. Otherwise, you will have to leave that particular construct away. So please remember, that is what is called the measurement model. You will have to identify the indicators to measure the particular variables you are going to investigate. I will explain later. That is coming under the stage number 2, right? So that means your development of your conceptual framework and your measurement model. Measurement model means the indicators or the scales, or sometimes we are calling questions or items to measure your scale. That has to be taken from the previously validated research. Okay. So the stage number 3, so designing a study to produce the empirical research. That is very important. That is your research design. Please remember that research design is the blueprint of your research. I will repeat that word. The research designing part is the blueprint of your research. In other words, it is something like well-laid housing plan. But remember that, right? Even though your housing plan is designed or drawn by the most experienced architecture in Sri Lanka, still in the future, sometime that may be changed. There may be some changes in the due course. Likewise, similarly, your research design will be or maybe little bit change in the future. I will give you an example, right? For example, so now at the proposal, research proposal stage, you are telling that you are going to analyze your data by SPS AMOS. I will be later explaining, or SPS, right? So in order to adopt or in order to use the SPS AMOS, normality should be established. Normality, otherwise you can't use. So initially you think that you will get the normality, but when you are doing your research, you will not be getting normality. Then you can't use the AMOS or the SPS as you initially said. So by that time, you will have to go for the smart PLS. That is why I told you sometimes you will have to change your original research design. But please remember, when you want to change your research design, please consult the non-experts. Immediately consult your supervisor. Okay, so that is about the stage 3. Stage 4 is a very important. Now you already identified your variables, you already have your indicators, you already developed your conceptual framework, and you already got your empirical results. Now you have to test the measurement model validity. If the measurement model is okay, or if the measurement model is valid, you can go down, or you can go right. You can see here. So here, this is the right side, you can go. So this is the way you are going down. But if the measurement model is invalid, you will have to go to the left, and you will have to start again from the stage 1, 2, 3, or somewhere else. So please remember, measurement model validity is a very, very important. Thereby you are assessing the construct validity as well as reliability. Okay, so please remember that this validity and reliability you have to check at the measurement model area or the measurement model stage. Okay, so there are so many ways of doing this. I will explain later if I have the time how to assess your measurement model. Okay, discriminant validity and the construct validity you have to assess, right? The next stage is the stage number 5. That means you have to develop your hypothesis. You have to develop your structural model. And the stage number 6 is assessing your structural model. That means testing your hypothesis. So based on your results, you will be able to give the conclusions and the recommendations to the your company, to your boss, or to anyone who gave this research you to do. That is your stage number 6. So please remember, all these 6 stages are very clearly, right? I am not going to repeat it again. So at the moment, now we are discussing about within one or 2 minutes, we will be discussing about the stage 1 very clearly, because that is the most important part, right? So the introduction to the variables in research, right? So without knowing these things, of course, we can't move forward, right? So please remember, the variable means, as the name indicates, it is varying. That means something, the value at the, you can see the third bullet, the value can differ at various times for the same object or the same person. That means from time to time, person to person, place to place, it varies. Then we call it's a variable. Okay, so please understand the term called variable. That it varies, right? It varies. As the examples, you can have it. Production units, maybe hourly production units, daily production units, right? Absenteeism, right? Tomorrow absenteeism may not be the day after tomorrow's one. Today's absenteeism may not be the tomorrow's one. That may be varying from day to day, right? So similarly, you can have whatever the variables as per your research topic. Okay, right. So the classification of the research interest. So I'll be not going to explain each and everything written in these slides, because these are very easy to understand. So you can understand. If you didn't understand, you can ask me, right? In order to save the time, I will be running through these areas, right? So what do you mean by the research interest? That is called the dependent variable. What do you mean by the dependent variable? Yes. Dependent variable means your research interest. That means what your company or the government or your NGO wants you to investigate. I will repeat it. Your research interest means, for example, your company wants you to investigate why the sales have been declined. So your research interest is the sales declining. So that is what is called your dependent variable. Okay. So your dependent variable is what is the issue that you are supposed to investigate. For example, so you are supposed to investigate the factors affecting to the purchasing intention of hybrid vehicle in Sri Lanka. So what is your research interest? Purchasing intention of the hybrid vehicle in Sri Lanka. So that is your research interest. That is called the dependent variable. Okay, so please understand the term called dependent variable. What are the factors? I will explain in the later stages. Okay, right. Now, if you can see, so I have already given here the techniques. So if you want to analyze the key factors affecting to the purchasing intention of the electric hybrid vehicles, or key factors affecting to the customer satisfaction of the banks, so that kind of research you will have to do by using SPS or SPS AMOS or Smart PL. So whatever I will be explaining later. Okay. So once again, I want to make sure that you understood the DV or the dependent variable that is your research interest. Okay, right. So the last sentence, the yellow given in the yellow color, yes, research interest maybe begin with the broader problem area, but please note that every time when you want to do the research, that does not mean that you have a problem to be solved immediately, right? Sometimes you need some areas to be improved. There may be no problems to be solved immediately, but there are some areas to be improved. So please understand why you are about to do the researches, not to solve the immediate problems, but to improve some intended areas, right? Okay. Now we are in the first variable, dependent variable, that is called criterion variable or endogenous variable, or there are some other names as well. So this is the research interest. I will repeat it. About this, you are going to investigate. This is what your company, your boss, your organization wants you to investigate. Okay. So I hope you understand. If you didn't understand, please ask me. I will later check these chat messages, right? Okay. So according to the Sekharan and Booji, the great scholars, I have a great respect on these two because their contribution toward the research is a very high. So according to them, the price versus demand. The price is the independent variable. That means you are varying the price according to demand changes. You can understand, when the price goes up, demand goes down. When the price goes down, demand goes up. So you can understand the varying variable is, independent variable is price, dependent variable is demand. In other words, your research interest is the demand. Now you understand the main variable or the dependent variable, that is your research interest. Okay, so please understand. So whatever, maybe PhD, doctoral, master's, undergraduates, your research interest, that means sometimes that interest may be decided by you. Sometimes it will be given by your organization. Sometimes it will be by the government or by the NGOs, right? Then factors. What are the factors? So please note the factors, right? This is the first factor called independent variable. Independent variable means what is the factor affecting to the salary. So I have here mentioned work experience. There are some other factors as well. I know it and you know it and everybody knows, right? But please remember, the work experience is an independent variable. Based on that, your salary will be changed. You understand? Based on the work experience, your salary will be changed, right? But at the same time, there may be some other independent variables as well. But please note that you or myself or your supervisor can't give or can't assign or can't identify this variable by his or her or own discrete. That has to be given through the critical literature review. That is the beauty of this research. So please understand, salary, that is of course your research interest, that will be given by your organization. Please investigate the factors affecting salary. Right now, I have already identified a factor called work experience. Please remember this, of course, I can't identify myself. I can't give by myself. Even your supervisor can't, right? This work experience should be identified through the critical literature review. Okay, you understand? So please understand, I will explain later, right? Okay. Now we already understood about the one factor, that is independent variable, which has to be identified through the critical literature review. Okay, so please remember that point very well. Okay, right now what is the next variable? Now we already know dependent variable, that is your research interest. Independent variable means the factors affecting. Here in this case, we identified only one factor through the critical literature review. So please remember, this work experience is a factor affecting to the salary. You know about that. Even myself, yes, I know. Your supervisor, yes, he or she knows. But remember, you have to justify these factors through the critical literature review. Okay, right. I will later tell you once again. So what is the next variable? That's a very, very important moderating variable, right? So don't worry about that. Finally, we will be developing the conceptual framework. I'm sure that most of you have already developed, but I will tell you how to develop systematically and scientifically. So please remember this throughout this session or the next sessions, if I was allowed by Dr. Sanat Divakara, these two words will be used by me frequently: systematically and scientifically. I will repeat those two words: systematically and scientifically, right? So here you can see the model number one. We will call it the simple model. I will be later explaining this complex model. The simple model, you are having the independent work experience. How did you identify? Who told you? This is IV. Yes, this was told not by my supervisor, not by Priyanta Morapitia. I identified through the critical literature review. Okay, right. Only one factor for the time being, for the simplicity of this explanation, right? And what about the gender? So I think I have written here very clearly. The third variable is moderating the relationship. That means the relationship between the work experience and the salary will be moderated by the moderating variable, will be modified. Modified means maybe positively, maybe negatively. So please remember, please note that moderating variables are modifying the original relationship. In this case, work experience and salary, right? Sometimes it may be increased, sometimes it may be decreased. Both sides are done by this moderating variable. That is why it is called controlling variable. Okay. So now you can see when we come to your right side, there's another model, number 2. That model is, right? That model is, you can see this work experience. Definitely you can count by years. Salary, of course, thousands or 100,000 or 10,000, you can count, or you can measure, or you can observe. Gender, It's a categorical variable. You have at the moment officially you have male and female. There is this is a categorical. But when you come to your right side, okay, so please see your independent variable is product design, right? So like, I know that lot of ladies are here. The product, depending on the product design, then the ladies are more towards into the purchases, right? That means product design is the key factor. Otherwise, they are not buying. That is independent variable. You can see these two variables. The purchasing intention, dependent variable. You are supposed to investigate about the purchasing intention, and you identified independent variable is product design. You identified moderating variable is product value. But if you can very carefully watch, compare these two models at your right side, these independent variables you can't measure, you can't observe, right? You can't count. Then how do you measure? For that, you have to use the Likert scale. But for the salary, work experience, gender, you can use by using the natural scales. That means I will explain later. So this is what you have to understand. So these are called the continuous type variables. Those kind of variables have to be measured through the Likert scale. So please remember that point. I will be explaining once again. Right? That is the moderating variable. Now we will be coming to the mediating variable. What do you mean by mediating variable? So this is very, very important for the doctoral students, whether you are doing PhD, DBA or MPhil, this is must for you. So please remember that. So the mediator means, unlike the moderator, mediators are used to improve the original relationship. I will repeat that word. Earlier, the moderators are modified the relationship, maybe positively, maybe negatively. But the mediators are always, the role of the mediators are to increase or to enhance the original relationship. Okay, now I'm not going to read this one. So let's go to this slide. Right. So here you can see the model number 1. Okay, what's that? So this is again research finding. The research finding shows that the socio-economic status of the students have significant impact on their reading ability. Even without going for the research, so you maybe understand. I also understand by our gut feeling. We know that that environment of the residents of the homes are affecting to the education of the kids or the children. So that is, of course, we know. But this is even though you know at this level, you can't say such kind of relationship without showing the research findings. Okay, according to the research, so the socio-economic status has a significant impact on the child reading ability. That is correct. Okay, for the time being, assume that is correct. And here, how did you identify this independent variable? Again, through the critical literature review. Okay, right. Now, let's go to the right side. Right side, you are having another variable in between. So if you go to your previous slides, this moderator, this is outside the model, right? This is outside. But in this mediator configuration, mediator is well within the system. So what do you mean by this mediator? Yes, again, the research findings show that the parental education levels have some impact on the kids' child reading ability. In other words, if we discuss in the layman language, if the parents are educated, then there is a tendency their children to study well. So that is it. So that is the mediator. So independent variable is socio-economic status. That means the children's social and economic status, right? That is independent variable identified through the critical literature review. And your dependent variable is your research interest is the child reading ability, right? Your mediator is parents' education. So what about this slide? So you have 2 lines, right? You have 2 lines. This one. This is called direct effect. That means without parents support. That means parents education are not necessary at all, or they are not concerning. So that is what is called direct effect. So if you come to this level, this path is called indirect path, right? That means the parents involvement. That means parents are educated, the education of the parent. So now I will now tell you how to define the mediating role. So the full mediation means, yes, that means this direct path is insignificant. Let me repeat it. This direct path is, okay, this direct path is insignificant. Then you call it fully mediation. That means if the parents are not educated well, your child is not studying well, right? That is, I am not telling that, you have to prove it, right? So that is called fully mediation. So what do you mean by partial mediation? Yes, partial mediation is at the same time both, right? Both paths, this path and this path, should be significant statistically. So very easy. So don't worry about these words, statistically significant, insignificant. Once you collected your data and fed into the SPS sheets, within fraction of minutes, you will get these results. So don't worry about that. First, you have to learn these things systematically. Then we will do the rest scientifically later, right? Okay. Now you understood the partial mediation also. That means both paths, direct and indirect paths, are significant. Okay. Is it clear? Right. Now, what about the no mediation? What about the no mediation? No mediation means this indirect path is not, this indirect path is, okay, this indirect path is not significant at all. So that means no mediation. That means indirect paths are insignificant, right? Okay, I hope now you understand full mediation, partial mediation, and mediation, right? So don't go after the technical meanings, right? Don't worry about that. We will be discussing later these things again if we got the enough time, right? Okay. So how about this moderate mediating variable? How did you know about that, right? So can't it be a independent variable? Definitely yes. Then how do you confirm that it is a mediator, it's a moderator, it's a independent variable? For that, you have to use the critical literature review. For that, you have to read the literature. You have to review the literature. Whatever the factors here should be justified by the critical literature review. So please understand. From time to time, I am reminding you this, right? So don't try to put the factors based your own understanding, your own insight, or your supervisor's directions. You have to support through the critical literature review, whatever for each and every variable you are considering must be empirically supported, right? Okay, right. Let's go further. So now you already know about. Okay, now let's go to the next slide. So this is once again, right? This is once again you can understand. So this is a simple research model, but you can use it. What are the factors affecting to the house purchasing intention? In other words, what are the factors affecting to the purchasing intention of condominiums in Colombo or Chittagong? We have some Bangladesh students here. So what are the factors, right? One may be the people like the very big people. So they need the luxury factors, but the average people like you and me, so we are concerning about the finance factors, right? And what about these other environmental lovers? So they are concerning about the environment. So there are many factors, right? All these factors have to be identified through the critical literature review. Okay, so please understand clearly. Okay, so now what is the first factor identified by me through the critical literature review? This is luxury factor. So this is the direct effects. So this is the indirect effect. Customer perceived value means, again, it's a management term. You can check it later. I'm not going to explain that one. The customers, how customers are perceiving the things, right? So that is the mediating effect, mediating variable. How did I get this as a mediating variable? That's the question you have to answer. That was selected, that was identified through the critical literature review. So please, my students, my professionals, we will be coming into the software selections a little bit later. Before that, you should be able to understand how to develop your conceptual framework. Why? The conceptual framework is the heart of your quantitative research. I will be repeating it. The conceptual framework is the heart of your quantitative research, right? Okay. Right. So this is the summary of the type of the variables. You identify your dependent variable, that is your research interest. That means about that you are supposed to investigate, that is your research interest or the dependent variable. Then independent variable means the factors affecting, the key factors. How are you going to find these things? You have to identify through the critical literature review. Next is the moderating variable. That is a contingent. That means it modifies the relationship, maybe positively, maybe negatively. But the mediator, mediators are used to increase or to enhance the relationship between the independent and the dependent variable according to the Sekaran and Bose, right? Now I will, in the last bullet, it says again very clearly, all these, especially independent, moderating, mediating variables may be interchanged. For me, sometimes for me, it may be independent, but for you, it may be mediation. But for you or for me, that has to be justified through the critical literature review. That's enough. Okay. Right. Now we came to the most important part, how to develop your research model or the conceptual framework. I think I have written very clearly in the yellow color, the conceptual framework is the heart of your research. That is your heart of your research, right? So there are some criteria that has to be followed. I will later tell one by one. Again, the conceptual framework. So according to the Malhotra and Agrawal and Peterson 1996, the conceptual framework helps to quantify the data. That means the conceptual framework helps you to develop your hypothesis, to test the relationship. So all the things are done through the conceptual framework. That is why I told you this is your heart. Okay. So bullet number 1 says it discusses the internal relation. Yes. That means conceptual framework means we have already discussed about very small research boxes. Will be later explaining about the complicated one, complex ones or whatever, right? So these theories I will be later explaining again when we come into the conceptual framework, major conceptual framework. So the yellow color, again, the bullet number 5 says the entire research rests on the basis of the conceptual framework. Why? I told you very clearly, conceptual framework is the heart of your research. So therefore, all the results rest on the basis of the conceptual framework. That means you have to develop your conceptual framework systematically and scientifically. I will later tell you how your conceptual framework is developed. Okay, for the time being, we have already discussed about the 4 variables: dependent variables, independent, mediating, moderating. In this slide, we discuss something a little bit about the relationship. I'll be explaining clearly in the next slides, right? Okay, the components of the conceptual framework. Okay, so please understand. So identify the variables based on the research question. Yeah, that is, if you can remember here, 6-step model, step number 1. That means you have to identify the constructs. That constructs you have to identify based on your research question, based on your research interest. Right? In my case, my research interest is the purchasing intention of the hybrid vehicles in Sri Lanka. That is my dependent variable. That is my research interest. So based on that, I have to identify the other variables. That is what the bullet number 1 says. So then the bullet number 2, define the variables clearly with explanation. That means you will have to give the operational definition. I'll be explaining later. Number 3, give the theoretical and the practical definitions here. All these your construct should be given the operational definitions, right? The practical. And what about the number 4? Identify I clearly explain the relationship. I'll be explaining later, right? So the number 5 is a very, very important once again. What is that? I will explain again. So in your conceptual framework, you are having some constructs: independent, mediating, moderating, development. So whatever the arrow you are drawing should be theoretically and empirically justified. Here to justify theoretically, you should have some non-established theories. But if you don't have theories, then you will have to rely on your own insights and the ideas according to the Sekaran and Booji. Do you understand what I say? So I mean that I am telling you, so whatever the relationship in your conceptual frame should be empirically and theoretically justified. But if you don't have theoretical justification, the Sekaran and Booji says no issue. You can rely on your own insights at the ideas, but please remember that is at the last. First, you must try to find the related theories. There are a number of theories, known and unknown. Okay, right. So they develop the conceptual framework based on these criteria, right? So don't worry about that, right? I'll be explaining. So this is a very, very simple conceptual framework. Very simple, only the two factors, right? Weight and height. As you know, what will happen if the weight is increasing, what will happen to the height? Or if the height is increasing, what will happen to the weight? That's the result, right? I am not discussing about the result. So this is a very, very simple research. So you are supposed to measure the weight and the height of the 10 participants. Then you will have to investigate the association or the relationship between weight and height, right? So my point is here not that. So here you can see the dependent variable is height. So how do you measure that? Please remember, so whatever the constructs identified for your conceptual framework, you should be able to measure all the variables you identified. I will explain later. So here height versus weight, very simple. Height you can measure by meters by using a scale. Weight, of course, you can.
Dr. Morabita,
yeah.
Can I ask a small question before getting into next slide?
Yeah.
Now, for the interest of all the people, now you said we need to get empirically validated relationship for the conceptual framework relationship. That's fine.
Yes.
Then you said we need to get it through a theory as well.
Yeah.
So a fellow member or a student or a doctoral candidate would see you need both or one is enough. So I understand both are needed, correct?
Definitely you need both, right? Definitely. That's a very good question. Definitely you need both. Because these are the very, very small conceptual framework. Within another 10-15 minutes time, we will be having a big conceptual framework. Then I will be again explaining the same thing. Very good question. Okay.
Thank you.
Definitely you need. And at the same time, please remember, please note, according to the Hare and Booji, if you don't have this, in any case, if you don't have any theories, you can go only using the empirical justification. That is, in case you don't have. Please remember that point very well. Okay, I'll be explaining again. That's a good question. Right. So the weight 10 height, this is a very simple model. But this is nothing to worry about that. You know about this weight. Here, I wanted to tell you how to measure. Of course, weight you can measure by using kilograms, right? Height you can measure by using the meters. Okay, so they are natural scale. Then what about the second model? Compensation versus job satisfaction. That is a social science based research, right? So the job compensation, that means, so as long as you are compensating well, then the people are satisfied. That's you know about that, right? That's okay. That's fine. But not only the compensation, to have the job satisfied, you have some other factors as well. So, but this is just for the simplicity of the explanation, right? How do you measure this one? Job satisfaction. Can you measure it by thermometer? Can you measure it by pulse oximeter? Or can you measure it by meter? No, you can't, right? Similarly, compensation, you can't. Then for that, you have to use the Likert scale. Likert scale, I will be explaining in the next slide. Likert scale means when you don't have natural scales to measure, so you will have to use the Likert scales. That is scientific scale again, but not the natural scale. Okay, right. And So this is a very small research, right? Just to explain you, right? So please understand, right? So what's that? Yeah, there's a relationship between the compensation and the employee satisfaction. Please remember. So whatever the research you are having, maybe PhD, maybe DBA, maybe MPhil, maybe a master. So this is part of it. If you are doing a doctoral research in any country, so you will be having lot of independent variables like this. You may be having mediator, you may be having moderator, but the procedure is the same. Okay, but in this case, I have taken only one independent variable, no mediator, no moderator, only one dependent. Why? In order to explain with the simplicity, right? Okay. So so this is your independent variable compensation. So what are these? Comp1, comp2, comp3, comp4. These are called indicator variables or the observed variables or the items or the scales. So there are different kind of names. So to measure this compensation, you are using this comp1, comp2, comp3, comp4. To measure the employee satisfaction, I will be using ES1, ES2, ES3. So how did I get these things? Yes, definitely I got all these 7 indicator variables through the critical literature review. Okay, everybody understood? So if you don't have these indicators in that particular variable you are going to identify, please leave it. Please don't take it, go for another article. There are so many articles where the indicators are available at the same time. Please remember that there are so many articles where the indicators are not given, right? Some scholars are giving the indicators, some scholars are not giving the indicators. So please remember that point as well. Now you understood this is a very simple model once again. So to identify, so to measure the employee satisfaction, you have the ES1, ES2, ES3. Okay, so this is the ES1. So what about, are you satisfied with your work? Yeah, so please remember, these are not the questions, but when we are speaking, we will say it is a question, but they are just a statement. So ES1 means statement number 1, satisfaction with the verb. So like you know that these reality programs, you are giving marks 1, 2, 3. I know that you are giving for your lecturers, right? Lecturers ratings 1 to 5, like that, 1 to 7. Is it clear? This is for the scale or the item or the independent one. Yes, sorry, indicator 1, the point is 4. So the indicator 2 point is 6, and for the indicator 3 point is 5, right? So clear? So I have included in this SPS sheet. So this is ES1 4, ES2 6, ES3 5. You can see these things, huh? These things. ES. So what about the ES mean? That is 5. That is the average of this all these 3. So you will have to add up these 3. 4 plus 6 and 5 is 15, and that is divided by the 3. Then it is 5. So how do you divide? So everything will be done when you are entering these things into the SPS here. Within one fraction of minutes, you will be getting the average value. So why did I get the average? That's the question. Yeah, because here, please remember that here you use 4 questions to measure this one. Here you use 3 questions to measure this one. So it is very unfair if you compare these scores with this score. Therefore, you are getting the average per question or the per indicator. That is why we have taken the average. So that is a very, very straightforward, very easy. So when you do this PS within one command, you will be getting the this average. I have given that. So this is how in this column, in this box, I have mentioned how to get the average. So it's very easy, right? So these are the things. This is the very, very small questionnaire. So now you want to, so there are 10 participants. So you have to get these ES values for all these 10. And again, you have to get these comp values for all these 10. Then that is your research is finished. Very small mini research, but comprehensive, but everything is there. Next thing is you have to do the analysis thing. So it is again another job which will be explained later. Okay, now I hope now you understood how to have your simple complete model, how to measure and how to feed into your SPS sheet. Okay, so this ES1, 2, 3, those were identified through the critical literature review. Okay, right. Now let's move into the next slide. Okay, this is a model developed by the Bangladesh student in 2014. What are the factors affecting to the mobile telecommunication industry in Bangladesh? This is very simple, but very, again, now we are little by little, we are coming into the big models. So here he has identified how many independent variables? 10 variables. One dependent. What is dependent variable? Customer satisfaction. I am not going to read out his independent variables. He has identified these 10 independent variables using critical literature review. So article is there, you can check it. Okay. So now here, this is for the masters. So he has not included mediator. He has not included moderator. Why? This is for the master. But if you are doing for the PhD, you have to include either moderator or mediator or both. Remember very clearly, but don't try to get this much of lot of independent variable. I don't think it is viable, right? Sometimes if you go for the literature review, furthermore, all these 10 can be categorized under 5 or 6, 4, maybe 7. So please remember how to identify the variables very critically. Now, don't take too much. Definitely, then you will be getting problems, right? So not the getting the problem. The real way is to identify through the critical literature review, right? Okay, so that's all about this. This is a model developed by the Bangladesh students, Mr. Rahman, in 2014. Okay, now again here, how do you measure these things? Customer satisfaction, yes, you have to measure. I don't know how he has measured, right? But anyway, again, he may have sometimes 3 or 4 scales or indicator variables. Again, to measure all these 10, he should have, right? He should have. Please understand. Right, now let's go to the next one. Right, this is called Parasuruman model. Right, this is called Parasuruman model. So this is a worldwide accepted model. When you have the service-based industry, your customer satisfaction is influenced by service quality. The service quality dimensions are reliability, assurance, tangibles, and empathy and response. That is 5 dimensions. This is a highly accepted, worldwide accepted model. So the master students, undergraduate students, definitely you can use the same model as it is based on your context, right? But the PhD students, DBA and MPhil, you can't. Why? Because you have to give a newness. So you can't copy and paste another one's model, but you can get this and modify. That of course you can. But please remember, you have to give a newness to the existing body of your area, right? Okay, so please remember that. Now we will be coming into the very complicated models, right? So that's it. No complications. Only thing here, you have 3 independent variables, 1 mediator, 1 dependent variable. Right now you can see. So this red circle. Yeah, that Mr. Digrimensian Brittner, 2019, he has measured this environmental performance by using 3 indicators, EP1, EP2, EP3. For the next one, another 4. Similarly, he has 3 independent variables, 1 mediator, and 1 dependent. So these are the moderating variables. You can understand, you can see those variables are in the rectangular box. Why is that? Rectangular box means they are simply understandable, simply measurable, simply identifiable. No need to go for the scales. They are just observed or identified. But this purchasing intention, you have to measure using Likert scale. These are the 3 scales. I think I also use these 3 scales. I'm not sure. Right? So now you understand. So what about these values? 0.81, 0.89, 86, 63. What are these values? These values are called factor loadings. So these factor loadings are useful to calculate your AVEs, your CER, or to assess your discriminant validity. So please remember, the PhD students, doctoral students, this is for you. You must know all these values. You need all these values in order to calculate AVE, average variance extracted, CR, composite reliability, and assess the discrete validity. And I have given in the yellow color, these values should be above 0.6, and there is another interpretation according to the Awang 2014, please refer it. So this is a complicated model. This is well enough for the PhD students. This is well enough for the DBA students. This is well enough for the MPhil, right? This is maybe too much for the master because there is a mediator here, but you can do it. But here, so he has not assessed the mediating effects. Why? In order to assess the mediating effect, you should have a direct effects and indirect effects as well. What do you mean by direct effects? So these are the indirect effects for this variable. For this variable, this is the indirect effects, right? For this variable, this is the indirect effect, right? But these three independent variables don't have the direct effects. That means these three variables don't have this kind of effects. So therefore, even though mediator is there, you are not analyzing the mediating effects. Why? Because you are not assessing the direct effects. So please remember that very clearly. Okay, I will explain again, but I will not be taken time due to the time problems, right? Okay, now you understood about the little complicated. No, actually nothing complicated, because here you are having only three variables with the mediator, right? And you know how to now measure, right? Okay, so please remember all these EP1, EP2, EP3 have to be identified through the critical literature review. Okay, right.
Dr. Marubisha?
Yeah.
Dinesh Amangodi here.
Yeah.
For the benefit of everyone, I would like to emphasize this factor loading thing. Can you elaborate a little more and give a small example for some new students? It can be a small complication.
Right. Oh, okay. Thank you very much, doctor. Yeah. The factor loading means actually, as far as my knowledge, these factor loadings are coming into when you are doing the doctorate. So the factor loadings means now EP1 is used to measure this EP, environmental performance, is measured using these three factors. So how far this EP1 measures the EP? How far? How far? That means how strong, the strength. Dr. Dinesh, did you understand? How the strength?
Correct.
Okay. So if it is less than 0.6, that means it is very weak. Correct. So if it is less than 0.4 means definitely you have to delete. Otherwise, you will be your results will be biased, and you will not get the measurement model assessed. So that is why I have given you this value should be above 0.6. So these are the strength. In other words, correlation between the EP1 and the in other words, this is the correlation between the indicator and the main construct. Okay, is it clear? Right. Now, now this is another model, right? Now, this is a little bit not the complicated, but they have written it in the complicated manner, so you don't have to worry about that. So actually, I use this model and this model and this model to develop my model. You can see the research interest is the purchasing intention of the electric vehicles. This one, this one, this one, right? And here you are having the mediator, no moderators. Here you are having the mediator, no moderators. Here you are having the mediator. Again, you can see they are not assessing the mediating effects. Why? No direct effects, right? No direct effect. They are having only the indirect effect, right? So the article is there. So you can see if you click this article, I'm not going to click it. You can see very clearly all the scales are there. That is why I selected these diagrams. So please understand, right? So that you have to be very smart, right? Whatever the factor you identify, that factor should have the indicators to measure. So if you click this article, right, then definitely you can have the very straight away to measure all these constructs. If you click this one, you have the scales to measure this one. For this one, definitely they have marked here the question, the scales are well within this articles. So that is why I selected these articles. You have to be smart, right? Okay, now the next one, this is my conceptual breakdown. Now you can see, so I have added a new one. That is that newness, consumer innovatives as a moderator, but other three scholars, great scholars, have not tested the moderating effect. But this is my 3 independent variables, but they have used different independent variables. I have used different because I can't use the same thing, right? In my doctoral degree, but I have used 3 different independent variables which were identified through the critical literature review. Again, I will have to tell you very clearly, when I was identifying these variables, I made sure that I have the scales to measure these things. Otherwise, I am not using, even though they are much better. So please keep that well in your mind when you are identifying your constructs or the variable, right? This is the customer pursuit value, the attitudes. You can measure it. And this is the consumer innovative. Definitely you can measure. Here you can see how many hypotheses are there, right? So this is the professional way you are drawing, right? Under H1 you have 3. What is 3? The relationship between the HM and PI, UM and PI, EM and PY. There are 3 under H1. Again, under H2, there are 3. The relationship between the HM and CPV, UM and CPV, EM and CPV. Similarly, but here the H4, you have only 1. The relationship between the attitude and the purchasing intention. So similarly, I have mentioned, I am trying to investigate the mediating effects of CPV between all these relationships. That means I have investigated the mediating effect of the CPV between this and this, this and this, and this and this. That means again there are 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, 9. Here again I have assessed the customer innovativeness, my moderating effects. Again, on all these 3 relationships. That means all together 13 relationships were identified by myself, but I have mentioned in the professional way. I will be later explaining if I have the time one by one, right? Because we have to go for the statistical techniques. So this is a very, very important, right? This is a very important for the each and everyone. So I already told you very clearly. Now here I have marked this arrow from this to here, H2. That should be justified empirically and theoretically. Empirically and H4, yes again. This arrow, yes again. All these arrows should be justified empirically and theoretically, right? Empirically and theoretically. So this is it. So when you come to the table number 1, these are called the meta-analysis. In the table number 1, that is 3.2. So you have to give the operational definitions of each and every construct available in your conceptual frame. You have to give the operational definition, not the dictionary definition. You have to give the operational, the practical definition. So what is the table number 2? Yeah, you have to mention your empirical support. I told you very clearly, and Dr. Dinesh asked. So here you have to give the empirical support. You have to mention here that empirical supports here in a table. So that is called, that is coming under the meta-analysis. So what about this third one? This is a very essential, compulsory for the doctoral. So whatever the theories you use, you have to give in this table. So in other words, so these areas, these arrows, these relationships, you have to support, you have to justify theoretically and empirically. So the empirical justifications are in this table, theoretical justifications are in this table. In the table number 1, the operational definitions, right? Now what about the final one? So very, very important, right? Very important. Now we are coming into the our area, that means how to select your software, how to select your statistical technique, right? That's the question. So now at the research proposal time, so you are deciding you are going to investigate by SPS Amos. How do you say like that? Who are you? Who am I? Who you are supervisor? Who you are? Who am I? Yeah, for that we have to review the literature critically about the similar researchers, and we should put all these literature in this table. Here you can see the research number. I think I have listed more than 10 researchers recently done. research number 1, they have used covariance based SEM. Number 2, PLS SCM. Number 3, again SCM ANOVA. Then finally, when the elite panel is asking which technique you are going to use, you can show this table, sir. So these are the scholars these are the techniques that they have used. So therefore, I am also using that, because otherwise you can't decide by yourself. I can't decide by myself. For each and everything, we will have to support empirically. So these 4 tables give very extraordinary value addition for your final research and for your research proposal, right? Okay, that's all about the meta-analysis. So the definition of the hypothesis, I am not going into the detail. Hypothesis means, as you know, it's a hypothetical statement, right? It may be true, it may be false. So that has to be tested. That is tentative. That means sometimes it will be finished tomorrow, right? So easy to understand example, it rains now. Is it a hypothetical statement? No, you can see it. It rains now. It's already raining, right? But when you compare, it may rain tomorrow. That is a hypothetical statement. It might rain or it might not rain. That is tentative and that is testable. Right? When you are raining, you can see it, right? Tentative means after tomorrow it is finished. Falsifiable means a very, very good word. That word is not available in the dictionary, I think, but if you Google it, you will have it. Falsifiable means one day it will be falsified. Today it is okay, but tomorrow it will be false. So that is the word falsifiable. So these are the characteristics of the hypothesis. I am not going to explain more. So everything is very clearly given in the slide. So this is the hypothesis development, right? Hypothesis means the relationship between the constructs in your conceptual framework.
Dr. Morabitia,
yeah.
Just to interrupt you, for the rest of the learning partners, I think for most of us to get this information, it took years and years with a lot of effort. I think in a few minutes time, Dr. Moribity explains these things very simply, very practically.
Yeah.
I think the learning partners will be really benefited because they don't have to spend lots of time on these elements because you explain this in very simply. So I invite everyone to pay 100% attention, so it will save your time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay, because we have another 14 slides, important slides. Okay, so hypothesis development, as the Dr. Dinesh said, so you have to identify your import variable, that is your construct, that is the stage 1 of the Hare et al. 2010 model initially we discussed, right? So similarly, so you will have to identify all these relationships, these developments, and you will have to test these relationships scientifically through the appropriate statistical tech. That is the key point today. Today, this program is designed for you to understand the appropriate statistical technique. That's what we are going to discuss from now onwards, right? Okay, right. So this is the framing hypothesis. Again, there are 3 kind of. That means the most simple means you are testing hypothesis, right? Testing hypothesis that can be that maybe corona can be finished within this year. That's a simple. The second one is the most important. That means you are assessing you are investigating the association between 2 factors, or you are associating the correlation between 2 factors. That is correlation. The next one is you are investigating the causation of the factors. Causation, that is the most important for the PhD students and the master students as well, because you are going to investigate the factors affecting. So that is very important. And the number 3 is you are going to compare the differences between 2. That is also the very good research. For example, you want to compare the smoking habit of the male group and the smoking habit of the female group. That is coming under the number 3, right? Okay. So I am not going to explain about this hypothesis. I think you know it. H0 means null hypothesis. That means there is no effect. There's a no relationship. H1 means of the same hypothetical statement, but that is a positive. That means there is an effect. That H1 indicates there is an effect. H0 means there are no effects, right? Okay. So how do you measure things? These are very, very simple. So when you collect all your data, then you will have to feed into the SPS. The SPS will give you your p-value. Please remember, in the SPS, the values, p values are not given as the p, they are calling it sigma value. So if the p value is less than 0.05, that means your relationship is significant. If the p value is greater than 0.05, that means your relationship is insignificant. So please refer these things I have given with the practical example, right? So this is again the very, very small conceptual framework. I have removed the mediator and I have removed the moderator for the simplicity of the explanation. So here you can see there are 3 independent variables, 1 dependent variable. So how have I measured these all 4 variables? You can see indicators here. You have 4, 3, 3, and 3. So therefore you have to get the final average value to compare this one, right? So please remember why you are getting the average value, because you are having different number of scales to measure your construct. So that is it. This is a complete conceptual framework, right? Okay. Now the testing hypothesis, as you know, so here H1, H2, H3, there are no any hidden or unwritten hypothesis, only these 3. Please collect your data as we did in the early example, put it to the sheet I have here, but I am not going to show it because of the time problems. So you can see that what will happen to this H1, H2, H3. If the p-value is less than 0.05, you can say that it is significant, otherwise it is insignificant. So very straightforward, you just follow these things. And I have to tell you very clearly, no need to write both alternative and the null hypothesis. You have to write only the null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis. No need to write the both. Please remember that point as well. Okay, now, yeah, this is a very, very important, right? This is very important. So when you are doing quantitative based research, you should do 3 surveys basically. But I know most of we are doing only 1 survey, but practically you are supposed to do 3 surveys. What is the 3 surveys? First is the preliminary survey. Why? Preliminary survey means you have to ensure the face and the content validity. For that, you have to distribute your questionnaire among 5 to 10 experts, right? So they should no need them to have a technical knowledge, but they should be knowledgeable to check your English, to check the meanings, ambiguities of your questions, because these questions, these scales were taken from sometimes from Norway, sometimes from Pakistan, sometimes from Bangladesh. So in order to get them into the Sri Lankan context, so you will have to get them checked by a knowledgeable person. So that is what is called preliminary survey. After that, once you got their feedback, you are adjusting them if there are any significant changes, and then you will be circulating again not less than 30 for the pilot survey. Why? You have to ensure the reliability as well as the validity. So once you got all this data, you will have to ensure that all the constructs measured by using the identified scales should be reliable and valid. So please remember that, otherwise you will be getting problems in the future, right? Okay, now finally, so after you got the pilot survey, so then you have to do the principal component analysis, and you will have to assess the validity, and you will have to do the reliability test, and you assure that the reliability and validity are okay, then you can go for your main survey. Okay, right? So please remember that point. And this is another argument here. So here, this is what is called exploratory factor analysis. But the scholars are questioning why you are doing the exploratory factor analysis when you are doing the CFA later. That's a very valid question. But for that, I have to give you my answer. You have to do the EFA now, because otherwise you will be carrying on unwanted scales for the future activity that is not necessary. So you have a technique called dimension reduction to scale down your scales into the manageable level. So this is it. So please check all these things, and EFA should be done as far as I am concerned, right? But at the same time, there's a critique on that, right? So this is the data preparation. This is again especially for the PhD people. This is a very, very important. I think I will have to use 3 minutes for this slide. So first you have to check you have to handle the missing data. Yeah, if you know that when you are using the Google Forms, there can't be any missing values, but there is a tool called to have the compulsory. That means your answer should be compulsory. So therefore, no need to worry about the missing data when you are having the Google form. So if you have a missing data, how do you replace? You have to replace by the mean, mode, or median as appropriate. That means if you have the data close to mean values, then you have to replace the missing value by mean, right? That is how you are removing the missing value. Then what about the outliers? So this is a very important factor. So what is the term means outlier? Outliers means unusual. For example, you have friends, I have friends, but I have one friend. He's a drinker. Wherever he goes, whenever he goes, he takes a lot of drinks. But other than that, he's okay. He's called a univariate outlier. Then who is the multivariate outlier? Multivariate outlier means you have some friends. He or she is a drunkard, is a smoker, is a gambler, is a womanizer, is a drug addicted. That is he's a multivariate outlier. He or she can't be in your friend list. If they are in your friend list, almost all of your friends will be affected. So therefore, you have to remove those kind of friends. So if you come to the research, what do you mean by univariate? Univariate means your one respondent has answered irrationally only for the one question, only for the one construct. So he is a univariate outlier. But the same person has irrationally answered for other 3 or 4, 2 or more constructs, then he is a multivariate outlier. You have to remove them by using the Mahalanobis distance principle, right? So the next thing is the normality. So this is a very, very important point. If you want to use the SPS or the SPS AMOS, your data should be normally distributed, right? So how do you test the normality? The best way is by using the Kolmogorov-Simrov test and the Shapiro-Wilk test. But I'm sure that all of your data sets, if you checked, definitely you will fail this test. That's the key. But at the same time, the Bryan et al., Bryan 2010, and many scholars have said that if you fail these tests, then you can go for the skewness and the kurtosis values. If the skewness value is well within the -7 and +7, you can assume that your data is normally distributed approximately, and you can go for the SPS AMOS. And the skewness value should be between -2 and +2. Then you can assume that your data is normally distributed. Please remember that even in my case, I didn't get this normality. So in that case, you have to go for the smart PLs, which will be discussed in the next slide. Okay. So the linearity, I'm not going to explain here. So you have to check all these things, these parametric tests, if you are doing a doctoral degree. Linearity, that means your construct should linearly vary approximately. There, how to check the linearity have been given very clearly given here as the command. So the homoscedasticity is a very, very technical term, but you don't have to worry about it. I have given the steps to check the homoscedasticity. That means your variances should be equal. So by Levin's test, you can test it. So the multi-collinearity is a very, very important one. So for example, I showed you the Bangladesh students have taken 10 independent variables. So if you check the multi-collinearity of those 10, definitely you will have to cut down 2 or 3. So that means, so the relationship between your independent variables. So independent variables, as the name indicates, it should be independent. So how do you check the independence? You have to check the multi-collinearity. The steps are given here. Okay. So this is a very, very important for the doctoral students, not for the undergrads. So these are called data preparation or the data screening or data scraping. Right. Now, this is a simple model once again. So I am not going to explain here. So this is a very, very simple model. Both models are very simple. So I already told you how to test the significance. If the p-value is less than 0.05, then you can say that the relationship is significant. If the p-value is greater than 0.05, then you can assume that the relationship is insignificant, right? So this is a very small example, right? This is once again I already told you your research interest could be into the 3 types. So here you are testing the relationship between the X and Y. That means you are testing the association between 2 factors. For example, smoking and the cancer patients. Is there any relationship between? So similarly, I have given the 5 practical examples. Here you can see there are no dedicated DVs. There are no dedicated IVs. Right and left side may be interchanged. So how do you check this one? This kind of research, if you are doing, mainly undergraduates, you have to do the correlation analysis, right? Steps in the yellow color, I have marked the test that you have to do. So very simple. After you find data, then you can feed into the USPS. Within 1 command, you will get the relationship, whether it is significant or not, right? This is the first type or the very basic. So this is what is the next one. The next one is the difference between the X and Y. That means I already told you. So you are supposed to investigate the smoking ability of the gender groups and the smoking ability of the, the female and the men and the women. That is 2 groups. So if you have the 2 groups, your technique is independent sample treated. If you have more than 2 groups, then you will have to use the ANOVA, one-way ANOVA. For example, the government votes CID to investigate in which province, out of the 9 provinces, in Sri Lanka there are 9 provinces, in which province having more crimes, then there are 9 groups, then you have to use the ANOVA. So I have given the statistical tool for that one as well. So what about the green colored one? Again, the paired sample t-test. Right. This is also very, very important, very small, but very important. For example, now a lot of students came to the special program or workshop, whatever. So your knowledge before the program and your knowledge after the program. So that kind of researches are done by using the paired sample or repeated sample t-test. Right. So please remember that these are coming under the SPS. So I just wanted to tell you the techniques name only. Right. So what is the next one? Now, this is the most important one. I think I will have to explain this one. So this is what everyone have to do. What is the effect of the experiment? In other words, what is the impact? Or in other words, what are the key factors on the purchasing intention of whatever in Sri Lanka or wherever? So the effect. So in this case, you have to use the SPS or the SPS AMOS or the Smart PLS Stata or SAS or RStudio. There are so many techniques. I will explain one by one. So these are some natural examples, right? Some practical examples. For example, the research we discussed, the factors affecting to the customer satisfaction in the mobile telecommunication, the factors. So when that word comes, key factors, right? The impact. So in that case, you will have to use this kind of technique, that is again SPS, AMOS or parametric, non-parametric. If it is parametric, SPS and SPS AMOS. If it is non-parametric, you will have to go for the Smart PLS, which will be explained later, right? Okay, right. So very, very straightforward. Undergraduate students, so you don't have to worry about the SPS AMOS. Same thing can be done by using SPS. Even the master students, no need to go for the SPS AMOS. No need to go for the Smart PLS. You can do even the moderate analysis, even the mediate analysis by using SPS. For that, you have to use the Professor Andrew Hayes process macro add-on. This is very simple. Now you can simply download by using the your browser. Okay. So now testing hypotheses in the quantitative research. That's the key area. Yes, I already told you. So if your data is normally distributed, you can go for the SPS regression or the SPS AMOS. For that, you have to satisfy that condition. Normality should be established. So how do you test the normality? You have to test by using Kolmogorov-Simbrov test or by using Shapiro-Wilk test. If those tests fail, the Bryan 2010 and many scholars say that go and check the kurtosis values and the skewness values. Those values are well within the given ranges, you can assume that your data is approximately normally distributed, right? So please remember the main condition for the SPS. Not only that one, there are some other, I will explain later. So SPS, IBM SPS AMOS means the covariance-based method. The normality is required, and you need the larger samples, and the model fit is concerned. Model fit, right? That means your conceptual framework should be perfect enough. Otherwise, your model will not be identified. If your model will not be identified, the SPS AMOS will not give you the results. That's a very, very dangerous. That's the risk. So if you try to downgrade or manipulate your data, the SPS AMOS will not give you the result, because the computer will understand that you have done something wrong. So please remember that one. So that is the beauty of the SPS AMOS. And in the SPS AMOS is everything you have to do the manually. For example, to calculate the AVE, to calculate the CR, to assess DB, everything should be done manually. So it's very interesting, but you have to learn systematically and scientifically, otherwise you can't do it. But when you come to the smart PLS, that is a totally different one, new one. That is a package, it's a plug and play. So you can collect your data and feed into the SPS sheet for the data preparation, and then in the same way you can get it into the smart PLS worksheet. All the things are done automatically by the system. No need to do anything manual. It's very easy. So therefore, everybody likes to do the smart PS, but the professors, your supervisors want you to do by using SPS, AMOS. And I myself recommend you to go for the both techniques. Why? The thing is that then the robustness of your findings are double checked. So therefore, better to go for the both methods, and you are finally your eminent panel will decide which technique is most suitable for you. Okay, so the smart PLS, I'll tell you later what is the advantage of having smart PLS, right? And in the yellow color, I have very clearly written both SPS AMOS and SPS techniques are under parametric. That means you need to have the normality established. Okay, so if again I am telling you, I know that this is a very big problem for almost of you and me. Definitely we are not getting normality. If you tested the Kolmogorov-Simbrov test and the Sapir-Whorf test, in that case you will have to go for the skewness and the kurtosis value test, right? Okay. So now introduction to structural equation modeling. So this is a very, very important way. This SCM have been long, maybe more than 50-40 years, but the techniques may be different. But now we have RStudio, we have SAS, we have Stata, we have Smart PLS, we have SPS AMOS, latest one, but the techniques remains unchanged. Okay, so I am not going to read one by one. You can understand if these are the very simple things, simple English. And this is a multiple linear regression were the same. Yeah. So that's why I told you the SEM is the direct advanced extension of the multiple linear regression. I will repeat it. SEM, whether it is a smart PLS or whether it is a covariance based or the SPS AMOS, is a direct extension of the multiple linear regression. Then what is the difference? Right. Multiple linear regression considers only the main constructs. They are not concerned in the measurement model. In other words, they are not concerned in the indicators that we had earlier. They are not concerned in the error terms. That is the difference between the SEM and the linear regression. Okay, so these are the things that I have given here. And the bullet number 4 also says that the multiple linear regression does not include the right. That is a very important one. Right? Multiple linear regression does not include the moderation and mediation analysis directly. But now, as I told you, Professor Andrew Hayes have geniusly introduced his process macro method to analyze the mediating and the moderating effects by using the space. That's why I told you very clearly, undergrads and the master students, you can analyze your mediating and the moderating effects by using simple SPS with the support of this Professor Andrew Hayes special process macro method. Okay, is it clear? Right. That has been written here very clearly. So when we go to the next slide, the why conduct SCM, I have already very clearly said that. So please check these things. So nothing to worry about that. Very simple things. SCM is structural equation modeling. And here the measurement errors are associated. Measurement errors are checked, right? So the measurement model is assessed. But in the SPS, if you analyze your data by using multiple linear regression, your main constructs are assessed, but your measurement model is not assessed. So in this SCM, you are assessing both structural model as well as measurement model. So that is the difference between. So you have to go for the SCM mainly because of that now. And also, please remember, this SCM software have become increasingly user-friendly. The interface is a very user-friendly, so very simple. It's something like Excel. So no need to have any codings. But if you go for the R Studio, if you go to R programming, then you will have to know some coding language. But for this, it is almost like Excel, right? But you have to go for the systematically and scientifically. Okay, here again the CB versus PLS SCM. That means covariance based SCM means that is SPS AMOS. PLS SCM means that is smart PLS. So here there are some differences. I'll be explaining in the next slide a little bit broader. But this is again in the source is the smart PLS official website. So this is maybe the final slide, one before the final slide. So what is the technique you are going to use? Smart PLS or covariance based SCM? So this is very, very clear. I already told you very clearly, all our professors, they have done their researches much better than us, little bit a long time ago. So most of them use the covariance based. So therefore, they also want us to do the covariance based. And I also want, why? You are learning. When you are analyzing your data set by using SPS AMOS, you are learning out of them. But when you're analyzing your data by using smart PLS, that's just plug and play. You are not learning anything out of it. Only very few learning. So therefore, better to go for both techniques. Better understand, learn, right? Okay. So anyway, how do you select this? Based on your critical literature review. I clearly told you at the meta-analysis slide. In the fourth slide, I have analyzed and I have reviewed very recently done researches, and I have identified how and what technique they have used. That is the point where you have to select which technique is most suitable for you, right? So that's a snapshot for you to show what is the technique that you are going to use in this particular research. Anyway, so the PLS SCM is you explore research of theory development. For example, you want to develop a theory of the prediction, right? But the covariance based is explanation, right? To test the theories, that means all the established theories. For example, you are having the theory of land behavior. So you want to test it by using your data set. Then the covariance based SCM is better because you are going to test it. Already established theory. So, but if you want to do exploratory research to new theory development, you have to go for the smart PLS. The number two, this is a very, very important. The reflective and the formative models. So what do you mean by reflective and formative? Right. So when you're doing your research by using covariance based method, you are not coming into these words because all the scales or the indicators are reflectively measured. So if it is a formatively measured, the measurement model criteria is completely different, right? Then you have to go for the different criteria to test that. So therefore, that is a little bit difficult. Remember that one. So you know what people are doing. So when they find their constructs are formatively measured, they will simply change this plus minus marks, right? I hope that you may have heard some bad experience. That don't do like that, right? So how do you identify this formatively measured though reflectively measured? So if you go to our previous complicated conceptual frameworks, you saw that arrows are coming from construct to the indicator. That, in other words, the indicators are caused by the construct. Then it is called reflective. Normally, almost each scales are reflective. That is why you guys have not checked. But when you are doing a little bit advanced research, you will be coming across formative. Formative means the construct is caused by the indicators. I will show it in the next slide, so don't worry about that. So how do you identify whether you are having formatively measured or reflectively measured? That's a very good question. Unfortunately, in the SPM, in the SPS AMOS, you don't have a technique to identify whether it's a formatively measured or the reflectively measured. But in the smart PLS, there's a technique called CTA, confirmatory thread analysis. So while you are doing that simple analysis, you will identify that your constructs are reflectively measured or the formatively measured. How? You will get, please remember that I am not going to technical details. Please remember that you should have a four indicators, right? Otherwise, this test will not run for that. If you have a 3 indicators, the test will not run. So CTA means, that is why confirmatory thread means 4. You should have 4 indicators, right? So once you got the analyzed results, you are getting the value at the last column, plus and minus. So if it is plus and minus, that means your constructs are reflectively measured. If it is plus or minus or minus, your constructs are formatively measured. So I'm not okay. So please check that one. Maybe the signs may be a little bit different, but that's the criteria, right? That's the criteria. Okay. So please remember very clearly, if you have something formatively measured, don't worry about that. Don't try to change the sign. What you have to do, you test the original document from where you got these scales. Check how he has done. Then you can retain as per original specification according to the Hare et al. 2018. They have very clearly said that in their book, in their latest book, if you got your test results as your constructs were formatively measured, don't worry about that. Just check with the original specification from where you got these 4 or 5 indicators. You can retain as per original. So that's it. For this is a very important, right? Please remember, when you are doing smart PLS, you have this operation. Otherwise, you don't have. So the smart PLS, the other beauty is you can have a small samples. Better if you have the small, bigger samples. But even if you have the small samples, that is okay. But when you do your analysis by using covariance based, definitely your sample should be high. Why? Because they are concerning the model fit. But in the smart PLS, they never consider about this model fit. If you read these articles about the smart field, they say that we are not concerned. Actually, we don't worry about that. We don't know about that. That's the simple way they are discussing about the model fit in the smart PLS, right? And when you come to the next one, yes, if you have the complex models, many constructs, many indicators, better the smart PLS, and they are believing the high statistical power because they are bootstrapping their samples. Because they get 100 samples, they are multiplying by it to the 5,000, bootstrapping, right? So that is why the smart PLS is better. And the next one is this, very good. This is a very good. So please remember that, doctoral students, when you are developing your conceptual framework, you have to make sure whether it is a first order or whether it is a second order. Because if it is a second, if it is second order, you will have to have some extraordinary test. So remember that one very well. Okay, and this one, model fit is basically concerned, not concerned, right? This one, right? And the smart PLS, yes, the model fit is highly concerned, because if the model fit is not there, the SPS AMOS will not identify your results. That means you are totally in mess. Your results will not be displayed. Then you don't know where you are wrong. That's a very big problem when you are doing SPS AMOS. But that problem does not come when you are doing the smart PL. Okay. The final one, the continuous moderator. So this is a very good point. Very good point. That means I'm sure that there are so many doctors here. So when you are testing your model fit, when you are testing your moderating effects by using SPS AMOS, you don't have a default system. You have add-ons, right? You have add-ons. You don't have a default. But in order to test the mediating effects, definitely you had the mediating analysis by default. So please remember. But nowadays you have the Professor Andrew Hayes process the macro method, as well as some other add-ons later added. But in the smart PLS, by default, you have techniques to measure the mediating effects as well as the moderating effect. The final one is not that important. Here the measurement, total variance, the covariance. So that's it. So this is the reflective type, and the format I already told you. Reflective means these are the what you call as indicators. Indicators are caused by the construct. Indicators are caused by the construct. Formative means the construct is caused by the indicator. That means arrows are coming from the indicators towards the construct that is then coming under the formative. The reflective means the arrows are coming from the construct to the indicators. So when you're doing the smart PLs, by default, they have set for the reflective. Please remember that. But you want to change it to the formative. But if you took the formative, definitely you will have a lot of tests, unwanted tests. So please remember that point as well. But when you're doing a smart, when you're doing by using SPS AMOS, every time it is reflective, almost reflective. By default, the settings are set for the reflective type. So these are the some prominent examples, easy to understand examples. I'm not going to read by them. I think that's all about for the today's session. That means we are finished by 8:30 according to Dr. Sanat request, because we have some questions. So this is a very good once again. So now we have already completed our today's session. So due to the time problems, I think I may have missed some things. I may have gone a little bit faster. Really sorry about that. So this is the systematic summary of the reference. I am sure that this time you may have seen this first time, because when you are having your final viva, so this eminent panel is asking how recent articles you use. This is how you have to show systematically how you review the article. So you try to give this kind of systematic summary of references in order to give a much value addition for your research, for your for your proposal or for your final research. I think that's all about today's session. So the recap sessions, I'm not going to take that time, because I think that you may have some questions. So, but anyway, I will just recap it. And these variables, we discussed about the independent, mediator, moderator. Then we developed the conceptual framework. There, I very clearly told you, in order to, before you identify your own construct, you must make sure these constructs have the scales to measure that this one. Otherwise, you will have to talk to your supervisors, and you will have to change it before you do your before you submit your proposal, because after that it is not that easy. And then we discuss about the mediating effects and the moderating effects as well. And then finally we discuss how to develop your conceptual framework, in the complicated ones, with the mediating effects, with the moderating effect. And then finally we discuss about the SPS, basic SPS, and smart PLS, and as well as the SPS AMOS. And my suggestion is to go for the both methods. Then you will learn, finally, your supervisor or your eminent panel will decide which technique is the most suitable for you. Okay, that's all about for today's session. Dr. Sanat, now it's over to you.
Yes, Dr. Morapidia, that's a very useful and it's very fruitful session. I also going through throughout the speech, and there were few questions. I think you answered those while you are doing the presentation. And there's another question, I think, that was asked by Dr. Dinesh as well. Anyway, we'll just for the participants' interest, will I will read that question. How are we going to show the hypothesis in conceptual framework for mediating effect in the conceptual framework?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, that's a very good question. I think, Doctor, I have to go to that. Yeah, so very good question. So this is, where is that one? Yeah, this is it. Yeah, actually, that's a very good question. So there are some professionals way to show. Some scholars are using the dotted lines, right? Some scholars are using dotted lines. Some scholars are using this way. So please remember that if you want to assess the mediating effects, definitely you should have the direct effects as well as indirect effects. That point you have to keep in mind first, right? In these first these three conceptual frameworks, they have not assessed the mediating effects, even though they have the mediator, right? Okay, now this is how. So this is H2, means under H2 you have three hypotheses, H2A, or sometimes you can write this H3O, whatever, no issues. H2A means the relationship between the HM and CPV, that is HA, H2A. H2B means the relationship between, I know you are not asking this one, right? The relationship between the UM and the CPV. And similarly, H2C means the relationship between the relationship between the EM and the CPV. Now that is clear. Now your question. H3 means, H3A means definitely you will not be able to show it graphically. That's good point. So we can show it, but then it becomes unprofessional, right? Then it becomes a mess, right? So H3A means the hypothesis means there is a mediating. In other words, the CPV. I will tell you there are so many ways, right? There are no any standard way. You have to write this, or you have to write like that. I will tell you one way, right? The CPV or the attitude significantly mediates the relationship between the HM and PI, that is H3A. Okay, Dr. Sanat, that is H3A. H3B means the CPV or the customer pursuit value significantly mediates the relationship between the UM and PI. And the H3C, similarly, you can write the CPV significantly mediates the relationship between the EM and the PI. I hope now you understand. Okay, and I have to tell you one thing very clearly. The same way you have to interpret when you are writing the moderating effect. So please remember, this H5 is called true moderating effects, right? There are another moderating effect called quasi-moderators, right? So please, this is true moderating effects, right? This H5 means, again, you have three. What is that three? What's that three? The first one is the consumer innovativeness significantly moderates the relationship between the HM and PI, that is H5A. H5B means, in the similar way, the consumer innovativeness significantly moderates the relationship between UM and PI, right? That's how the similar way you have to you have to formulate, the word is formulate the hypothesis according to the conceptual framework. And when you are writing your hypothesis, please remember to mention 2 or 3 previously proved hypotheses, whether it is positive or negative. Don't try to write only your hypothesis. Please check some articles, then you may understand. Also, I have to tell you one thing very clearly, Dr. Sanat. If you check the any articles in the Emerald site or Science Direct or Cambridge or Oxford, they have not tested the normality. They have not tested, right? Many, I mean, not overall, many. Why? Because they are not concerned about that. So please remember that point as well. Okay, Dr. Sanat.
Yes, thank you. That is very clear and very interesting as well. There are a lot of comments coming that the session is very interesting, and actually that credit goes to you, and thank you. Another one question, what is the best limitation in having number of hypotheses? That means I think they're asking number of hypotheses.
Actually, that's a very good question, right? Because that depends on your research question, right? That's a very difficult to answer question, because normally if you have more than 5 or 6 constructs, that means that is irrational. That means you will be coming across that problem called multicollinearity. Right. So basically, the doctoral students that I read that Bangladesh article, that is not a doctoral student. If a doctoral student did that research, then he or she may have only 4 or 5 indicators. He have a downscale, right? Because definitely, if he tested the multicollinearity, he may get called. So please remember that 4 to 5 constructs as the independents are much better, but based on your research question. Otherwise, you will, in my case, if you check that one, so what are the factors affecting to the purchasing intention of hybrid vehicles in Sri Lanka? I found more than 74 factors. I have listed all these things. Finally, I just scaled down, shortlisted, and I brought them into the 3 major areas, 3 major construct. That is also based not by my own, based on the critical literature review. So please remember that you saw that very big articles. 5, 6, 7 is actually in a big way. 6, 5, 4 are much better. Sometimes I think you were Dr. Sarath, you may have seen even one independent variable is better. Sometimes they don't have a mediator, they have only moderator. Sometimes they don't have moderator, they have only mediator. So please remember that one based on your research topic. Okay.
Yes, and there's another question from my side. Actually, I think that is the one asked by Dr. Dinesh as well. And that this is on constructing the conceptual framework. Now, you explain it using the empirical construct. Actually, can we can have it based on theory as well, no?
I think you missed the point, Dr. Sanath. I already told you very clearly, conceptual framework is the heart of your quantitative research. That is the first point, right? All the whatever the relationship you have drawn in your conceptual framework should be empirically and theoretically supported, both way, right? Both way, right? So please remember that one. Sometimes when you are doing a exploratory research, that means a fully brand new research, maybe you may not have empirical support, but remember that now almost every kind of research have been done. So you can't say that, no, sir, I didn't find empirical. No, you can't say like that, right? Then you know what the answer is. Then they will tell that you checked only in the Google, no? Then check in the Emerald, you check in the Cambridge, check in the Russian, check in the Chinese, there maybe. So you can't say that you didn't find, right? So according to the Sekran and Bauji, they said very clearly, each and every relationship have to be empirically supported as well as theoretically supported. But in any case, if you didn't find related theory, then you can go on the empirical support. I will send you the original reference with the page number. Okay. Why? Yes. What is the reason? The reason is, so this is your conceptual framework you develop. So who are you or who me are to draw this kind of things and test the results? Who? That's the key. So therefore, you need to support your conceptual framework theoretically as well as empirically. Okay. So because whatever the conceptual framework you draw here, once you feed the data, you will get answer. Then who is responsible for these answers? How do you confirm that these answers are valid or not? So that is why you have to prove it. Okay.
Yeah, that is where that the transformation happens. No, now when we find the research problem, and then after that we will be converting that problem to the research problem now.
Yeah.
So then we have to we have to find all the gaps in
Definitely,
theoretical literature,
yeah,
empirical, and all. That is where these all contributes. That's
yeah.
very clear, and it's very good. And
so anything else, no issue. So if any student have any problem, they can contact me straight away through you directly me, then I will answer based on my capacity. We are like, we are very small people in this field, but in this we can give you, because we have the reference for this. Normally it is a very important one. So if you want to do your research by using SPS AMOS, just forget about this Kolmogorov-Simbrov test and the Safarov-Wilk test, because definitely you will fail it. I can show you right now. Then in that case, you have to go for the kurtosis value test and skewness value test, then definitely you will pass. Okay, so please remember that point very clearly. And also the PhD students, I know there are so many PhD students here, so you will have to do that 6 or 7 tests. You will have to do that one, simply normality test and linearity, homoscedasticity, and multicollinearity. All these tests have to be done, and also you have to remove your multivariate outliers, because don't try to keep your friends having too many bad qualities. One bad quality is enough. Okay, that is, you have to do it through the Mahalanobis distance principle. That is a very, very easy principle. Okay, Dr. Sana?
Yes, that's fine. And I think we are on schedule, and you completed the session on time as we expected, within 2 hours time. So I should thank you for the wonderful session that you conducted. Now it's time to call it a day. So first I thank Dr. Engineer Priyantha Morapiti accepting our invitation and sharing your very valuable knowledge among us, which will finally enable to enhance quality of research. And also we hope in future to have more sessions with you, and that will be a very good knowledge sharing sessions for all the researchers in our country. And then my sincere thanks to
1 minute, Dr. Sanath, and okay. People are asking the recordings, and that has to be tested.
Yeah.
And of course, yes. PowerPoint slides I will be sharing, no issues in that. Anytime they can call me through the WhatsApp, then I'll be answering. 24 hours I am working, because I am working for other countries as well. So no issues in that. I'll be sharing, and any problems, if you want to fine tune their conceptual framework, they can contact me through you or through me. And
you can share your number if
that has already been given in the last slide. I'll be sharing. I'll be sharing this. Okay,
that's fine.
Yes. And how do we share this one? I mean, there are about 90, even though now
I got some the emails I recorded, and I think it's there. We can share.
Right. And anything else?
We'll see how. Yes. Okay. Then my sincere thanks to all the supporters from Doctor of Business Administration alumni, President Dr. Dinesh Hamangoda, and all the members. Your directives are very important for us. I thank all supportive hands from University of Kelaniya coordinators and section heads, the department heads, Professor Patrivasam, Professor Vanabesekara, and Dr. Ruvani, and from Colombo University as well. We invited a lot of participants. Actually, those are from Master of Business Administration, Doctor of Business Administration, and Master of Business Studies. Likewise, in many areas, I think most of the participants were interested getting the knowledge on research. And also the big thanks to all the participants in this session. You are the assets for us. So without you, it's not possible to make this event success. So I think with that, we can wind up the session. So once again, I thank you all, and good night, and have a pleasant weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night for everybody. Thank you very much for trusting us, me, and especially special thanks go to the University of Kelaniya, where we learn a lot, And then again, special thanks to the Dibaku team, especially the Dr. Hamangoda, the president, newly elected president. Now he immediately has to work immediately after he was elected. Thank you very much, Doctor. And Dr. Sanat Divakar, the next president, and you have been doing a very great service from the very beginning. Thank you very much for inviting me to have a great session onto this rich audience. Thank you very much. Good night for everybody.
Good night.